Hello, this is Elena, and you're about to listen to an episode of a new series we're calling The Effectiveness Workshop. After recording over 100 episodes of this show exploring marketing effectiveness, we realized we wanted more direct insights from CMOs who are applying these principles in their daily work. So we're introducing a new format where we chat with some incredibly smart marketers and jump right into practical takeaways to help you advance your career and your brand. I hope that you like it. Enjoy the show.
Marketing effectiveness.
What's your marketing philosophy?
What does marketing effectiveness mean to you?
Welcome to the Effectiveness Workshop.
Marketing Architects.
Hello, and welcome to the Marketing Architects, a research-first podcast dedicated to answering your toughest marketing questions. I'm Elena Jasper. I run the marketing team here at Marketing Architects, and I'm joined by my co-host, Rob DeMars, the Chief Product Architect of Misfits and Machines.
Hello, hello.
And we're joined by a special guest, Chelsea Sumrow, the Chief Marketing Officer at First American Title and Insurance. That brand is a 135-year-old title insurance and settlement services company. Chelsea has over 25 years of marketing experience working with some well-known brands, including American Home Shield and Front Door. An alumnus of Baylor University, she's built specializations in digital strategy, lead gen, and brand management. We're thrilled to have her share her insights and experiences with us today. Welcome to the show, Chelsea.
Thank you. Good to see both of you and glad to be here.
Chelsea, I must say, you and I have had the opportunity to work together in a previous life, and I've enjoyed that wonderful city of yours, Memphis. And as a part of this, I thought I'm going to do a little trivia question for you. My guess is this is an easy one. So Memphis is the first location of the first self-service grocery store that opened back in 1916. Can you guess? No. Okay. It's perhaps the greatest grocery store brand name ever created, the Piggly Wiggly.
Oh, yes.
The Piggly Wiggly, the first self-service grocery store, and it was founded in Memphis, Tennessee. I thought that was fascinating. So
That is very fascinating. So I learned something very cool. I can honestly say I've never been to a Piggly Wiggly, but my husband has been to one. That's where they used to have to stand in lines to get concert tickets.
Oh, I want a T-shirt from the Piggly Wiggly.
Yeah.
I would love a T-shirt from there. I mean, that's just, what a great name.
Rob, something tells me we could make that happen if we
All
wanted
right.
to.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks, Chelsea, for putting up with that. There could have been a lot more to ask, but Rob liked the word Piggly Wiggly.
I could talk about Piggly Wiggly for the rest of this episode.
All right. Well, we're not going to do that. So let's move forward. We're back with our thoughts on some recent marketing news. Again, we're always trying to root our opinions in data research and what drives business results. And this interview with Chelsea is part of our Effectiveness Workshop series where we talk to marketing leaders who are leading the way for effectiveness in the United States. And I usually kick off our interviews with a piece of research or sometimes an article. And one thing that made me extra excited to talk to Chelsea today is the fact that I don't think we've ever talked with a CMO of a brand that's over 130 years old. Although I know the brand and
She's
business
not that old, though.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Just
The
want to clarify.
CMO.
We're not going to talk about how old I am. Yes, we are
No.
135 years old at First American. Pretty
Yes.
exciting.
And I know that the brand has evolved a lot, obviously, since you were founded, but I wanted to find some more research that could tell me a little bit about the benefits and challenges you might face running marketing for a classic, massive company. And I found some research from Yoon Kim and Joydeep Srivastava called The Achilles Heel of Established Brands, the Effective Brand Age on Consumers' Brand Choice. So previous studies have found a strong consumer preference for older brands, but this study found that this preference can change according to consumers' expectations of innovation within the category. So they analyzed Amazon sales data and they conducted 7 experimental studies and found that as consumers expect more innovation in a category, their preference for older brands might decline. This shift occurs because consumers start valuing excitement-related traits like dynamism and adventure over consistency traits like reliability and stability, which are qualities typically associated with older brands. So Chelsea, you lead marketing for an older classic brand, but I know that First American prides itself on leading the way for digital transformation in your category too. So how do you combine First American's historic brand identity and your rich history with this need to keep up with more modern marketing trends?
It's a great question, and probably one of the topics in week 1 at First American when I joined, because one of the first things that our leadership team at the executive level briefed me on was, hey, how do we modernize our brand? That was literally one of the top 5 questions. And most people who are not marketers immediately go to logo. So that's where they started. And I was like, okay, logo's not where we're going to start. Because, Elena, what you said is so important. Rich history, that foundation that we've built, we have extremely high aided awareness in our industry. And if we want to hold true to who we are and that authenticity, we have to hold that and build that modernization along with it. So where we started, which I feel like is hard to get people to start here because it's a lot of heavy lifting, is being intentional about who we are, who we've been, who we are today, and who we want to be in the future, and make sure all of that matches. And then make sure we answer why First American. Because an older brand and an established brand, you think you know the why, but if you're not intentional about it, you have 17,000 employees all making up their own why. And that dilutes the brand story over time instead of maximizing your impact to really build on that aided awareness and start building on and creating top of mind awareness, which is our opportunity. So we started with a purpose statement, not because we didn't know who we are, but we weren't intentionally putting it on paper and then defining that as the soul of our brand. And once we did that, now we can start to explore the visuals, the tone, logo, mind you, around the modern aspect without losing who we are. So it's been a really exciting journey that we're really just chartering. Still have a long way to go, but it's exciting to see everybody get on board with that exercise because it's not a marketing exercise. It's an us exercise.
That is great advice to not just immediately change the logo. I'm so glad you actually had someone pushing to do it, but you said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to take our time. And I think that's a common story you hear about. A CMO comes in, they're like, let's change the logo.
Let's change the website. It's the first thing to do, right? And so our website is huge. So we're not going to tackle that yet until we really understand what's the soul of our brand and how do we keep it true in everything we do, including the website, including the logo.
So First American, you're right. You're a huge company, massive website. There's a lot of different business lines that you have. And I'm always curious to learn more about what kind of growth and results marketing is responsible for at a brand of your size. So what's the job of your marketing team at First American? And does it differ at all from your previous marketing roles?
Yeah, I love this question so much because previous roles that I've had, marketing served to drive revenue, right? Especially if you're in a direct-to-consumer brand. You don't have a sales team, you have ad dollars. And those ad dollars are measured towards what is growing the business and what is not, so that you're constantly optimizing and shifting your spend to growth. At First American, and really a lot of large B2B companies, marketing has been seen as a cost center, right? You're supporting sales collateral, events, creative and messaging, which are all really good things. We have to have those. But the journey that we're on as a marketing team now over the last year and a half is transitioning from cost center and building the revenue driver on top of that, where we can attribute revenue to marketing activity, which a lot of people think is crazy to talk about in a B2B brand, but digital is part of everybody's life. And I think that is really the catalyst that some industries, like the real estate industry, for example, are behind in, because relationships and human-to-human interaction have always taken precedence. Those are not going away, but there's so much opportunity to leverage marketing in new ways. So I think that the biggest shift for me in this role is don't assume that people understand what marketing could be, because they only know what it has been. And so we have to be really good storytellers internally and also very good collaborators with product, sales, operations. We can't do this on an island, or we'll never come up with a model that attributes revenue back to marketing activity, and we won't grow our footprint through brand and have that full funnel approach to growth. So it's been an exciting journey and really a new muscle that we're exercising that we think can be a real differentiator for First American.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think a lot of people, they dream about marketing for big companies, but I think sometimes at a B2B brand, you're right, you're getting to flex new muscles and do more because you've got the external audience, then you've also got an internal audience that you have to kind of convince, take on the journey with you. So you mentioned this a little bit, just the difference between how companies like a D2C brand might look at marketing versus more of a B2B brand. I wanted to talk a little bit more about that. How do you think the challenges that you face marketing a historic, and I know you sell to consumers and businesses, but maybe more B2B focused brand, how does that differ from those other brands you've worked at, maybe a less established, more consumer focused brand?
With established brands, whether you're B2B or not, but certainly in B2B, the tendency is to get stuck in what you've always done. So when I first arrived, I would ask the marketers at the organization, hey, why are we doing this? And they're like, well, because we did it last year and the year before and the year before that. And so it just becomes routine. But asking why 5 times until you really get to the answer of, well, we do this ultimately because it solidifies relationships for sales, or it drives brand awareness, or it creates leads for sales that we have to hand off to them. So understanding the why is really important so that you don't get stuck in the rinse and repeat mode. Whereas a younger company or even direct to consumer or B2C, you have less of an establishment and more of a test and learn mentality. And we should absolutely have both of those in a B2B company. And so, especially large companies, a lot of times everything is seen as a huge project that's going to take a long time and it's very waterfall and linear. Versus marketers are problem solvers, and we should be testing and learning and piloting and failing fast. And so that's the new muscle that we're exercising as marketers at First American, because I really think that it's opportunity left on the table in an industry that has not leveraged that mentality. And I think the other thing I would say is with established brands or older companies, it's also really important to bring fresh talent to the table so they can see things differently, but also make sure you're building a team you can pass the torch to. And I see a lack of that in a lot of different marketing teams is, oh, well, this is our established team. Well, who are you going to pass it on to one day? And who are you going to bring in to challenge your ideas so that you don't get stuck in a rut? So I just think there's balance to everything we do, but certainly a lot of opportunity with where we are at First American and bringing that test and learn mentality to the table.
Those are great points. And I think some B2B brands, that mindset of, oh, this is just the way you've always done things, is how you end up spending millions of money on trade shows every year. And all of a sudden your budgets.
Absolutely. Yeah. And trade shows have changed. COVID changed a lot of things, and there's still a very different element to those today that we're still trying to wrap our heads around on what is the value. So absolutely, it's a great example.
So it sounds like you're maybe bringing in some new channels, testing and learning, trying some new things at First American. And I know that marketing measurement, it's a hot topic at any brand. It's probably the biggest topic that comes up on this show. And First American, you're a big brand with a lot of different offerings, trying new things. So I can imagine measurement isn't always straightforward. So how does your team prove the impact that your marketing is having on the business?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question every marketer should be asked if they haven't been asked that question. And it's a challenging one, no matter what industry you're in or how mature you are on that path to measuring impact. And I think for me, it starts with empowering the team to have the right tools, the right tech stack, and the right data. But that's not all. You can have all that, but if you do not have good storytellers on your team who can translate that data to a non-marketer and tell them what it actually means in terms of value to the business, then you'll never get out of test and learn and piloting. You'll always hit a brick wall, because if you can't tell that compelling story of what this could be in the future if we scale it and get out of pilot mode, then you'll always have a frustrated team. And so building a team of people in marketing who are good storytellers, because we should be, that's our job externally. And sometimes we forget that we have to be good storytellers internally. And to me, that's the key to attributing revenue, because you have to collaborate. Again, you've got to get other people on board that touch the marketing activity, whether that's sales, product, operations, and make sure that we all agree how we're going to attribute revenue from a marketing perspective. And then the results will show themselves. So pretty exciting to see my team go from, we don't drive revenue, to having a goal and knowing where we are to that goal year to date, and really starting to push and test the waters on, do we have the right things to work on, or do we think we should pivot because we want to hit that goal at the end of the year? And that goal is revenue, right? Not just number of projects or assets created.
Is that story that you've identified hitting the math metrics at the end of the day?
That's right. Right.
Yeah.
A lot of marketers who've been in a supportive role don't understand how much math is actually part of marketing, which if you told me that as a college student, I would have quit my marketing path, but I love
Yeah,
it today
same.
because it has meaning behind it, right?
Good thing there's a calculator, right? My
For sure.
goodness. Well, so, we like to creep on marketers just to better understand what kind of channels that you're utilizing to make marketing work for you guys. Notice you do a little bit of television. How do you balance using traditional channels like TV, offline channels versus your online channels? What does that balance look like?
I think that it all comes down to everything is connected. And just like you have silos in big companies, you have silos within marketing. And so you've got your digital team focused on one thing, you've got your broadcast media focused on another. But at the end of the day, those two things are very connected if you're doing it right. And so the more you're spending on upper funnel activity, the more efficient your down funnel activity is. And if it's not, you're probably doing something wrong, or you have a different goal altogether. And so a lot of broadcast media efforts move the needle on brand. And so
Right.
there's so many marketing teams out there that aren't measuring brand. And brand is something you absolutely can measure. And so having that full story so you can balance very expensive upper funnel activity that's hard to measure, but showing what it's doing to the down funnel metrics, they're connected. So that to me has been a lesson over the last probably 7 years of just really scaling spend at the top of the funnel is hard to do and hard to get the yes from our friends in finance. But if you can show them what it's doing to the bottom of the funnel and to your brand overall, the yes becomes a lot easier.
Tactically, just curious, how does First American measure brand?
We have a third party partnership with a research firm, and we do brand equity and brand perception pulse studies in the market to hit statistical significance. And we do it at different times in the year, knowing whether we have very high upper funnel spend in the market or huge events in our industry where we are sponsoring those. Elena, you mentioned trade shows. They're so hard to measure unless you can tie them back to brand. And brand perceptions are a big piece that you can tailor by audience so that you're really moving the needle on a certain audience versus just this huge monster called brand, right? So that those brand equity studies, they're our fuel for everything that we do. And that's really where we start.
Chelsea, it's so nice to hear you talk about upper funnel influencing down funnel, and you're definitely speaking our language, which I had a feeling you would, but it's working out pretty well. So it's nice to hear a CMO backing up things that channels like TV can do. And I was excited when I saw that First American has done some TV because it's not as typical for like a big B2B brand to be investing in television. And one thing we talk about a lot on this show is marketing effectiveness. And part of the reason we like to talk about it is because it promotes TV. We're a TV agency, so it works out pretty well. But I know that marketing effectiveness, it can mean different things to different people. So what does it mean to you? And do you think that we have a gap here in the United States?
A gap in the US, no. A gap in industries, yes. A gap in different companies, no matter what industry you're in, yes. I don't think it's specific to a country. It's just definitely part of the culture of the company you're in as to where you are in that maturity scale. But I think, effectiveness to me is definitely focusing on outcomes versus outputs. And I see this every day, no matter what team or what company I'm talking to. It's so easy to fall into the trap of focusing on your to-do list. Those are just the outputs, right? But why are those outputs important and what value is it delivering to the business? That's the outcome. And outputs can change. They should change, because if your outcome is not coming to fruition, then you're working on the wrong things, right? And that to me is where work becomes really fun, especially as a leader, because then you start to empower the team to ideate and come up with the pivot on their own of, you know what, these outputs aren't moving the needle on our objective. So let's test this thing over here in parallel and see if we can move the needle another way. And it gets the people who are closest to the problem using their brains instead of listening to the smartest person in the room, who's not even the person closest to the problem, right? In many cases. And so effectiveness is definitely all about focusing on outcomes.
I love that. Outcomes over outputs. I'm going to remember that. That reminds me of So marketing teams, reporting on like digital impressions, like, oh, we got this many digital
Who
impressions. It's like,
cares?
well, yeah, like that, I
Yeah,
could make that go up every single month forever, but what is it actually, what is it actually doing for the
right.
business? So earlier you mentioned at First American in particular, kind of coming in and maybe changing some belief systems around what marketing can do. And we sometimes have to do that when we're talking to clients and trying to sell in TV. And one thing we use a lot is research, and a big part of marketing effectiveness is research. So what's your experience with marketing research? Like some of the work that comes out of maybe Ehrenberg Bass or the B2B Institute, does that drive or support decisions that you're making for First American?
Yeah, again, we have a third party resource that we see as an extension of our team, and we partner with them on different ways to leverage data and research to inform our decisions. So, one that we're actually working on right now, brand perceptions of a large 135-year brand broken out by target audience are really important because those audiences have different needs and they interact with the brand in different ways. And so, again, aided awareness is super high for our company, but unaided awareness or top of mind awareness is not where it needs to be. And that's our opportunity. And so, to me, perceptions of certain audiences and understanding where you're scoring low on some perceptions or lower helps my team understand how creative and messaging can bring that perception to the top of people's minds and change their perception, but also marry up outputs, the things we're doing, with why we're doing them for a certain audience so that the perceptions and the messaging and creative around moving those perceptions are believable. You can't just say who you want to be, you have to be it. So the research tells us where we're scoring low. The creative and messaging helps us heavy up and repeat. But then we have to anchor that to things that are real so that it's a believable creative or messaging and not just something that we're trying to brainwash people into doing, because the years of marketing being brainwashing are over, right? People can do their research. There's customer reviews online, and that's a really important element to consider, that you have to be authentic in everything you do, but the data tells you where to start.
So my belief that the Piggly Wiggly is an amazing brand name is probably contrarian. What would you say is one of your most contrarian marketing opinions?
I think it's time for a contrarian corner. The lines are drawn, who's right, who's wrong.
So this one might be a little too clinical, but if anybody on my team is going to watch this, they're going to laugh out loud because I lose it when somebody tries to show me a dashboard. I just built this amazing new dashboard. Take a look at this dashboard. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, we're not going straight to the shiny new tool that somebody built. You're going to pull data manually through blood, sweat, and tears and figure out what's usable before we ever automate it into a dashboard. And they're like, well, that sounds really manual. Yes, that is the work that has to be done before a dashboard can be built. And so I have seen this at every company I've ever worked at. Oh, I got this new dashboard. And like, you can use it in 30 seconds and go, I will never use this again because it doesn't answer the question that I have specifically, right? So to me, it's bells and whistles, it's window dressing. And if there's no meat behind the bells and whistles, no one's going to use it. And you just sucked a lot of resources out of the atmosphere to build something nobody's going to use. So dashboards are kryptonite to me. I cannot stand them.
Chelsea, I love that. I think we see that a lot where
Yes.
you might have something that looks pretty, but is it actually accurate or giving you the information you need? And that's how marketing teams end up spending most of their money on tech too. Like they have all these different shiny bells and whistles.
And then you've got competing resources and a line you're standing in to get something valuable done, but you're standing in a line behind dashboard creation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So,
right. And I don't think that's too clinical. Anything seems clinical when Rob tees you up with Piggly Wiggly.
I know,
So,
for real.
You're good.
I am going to try to find a shirt for you, Rob. It's now like
Yes!
a personal mission.
Oh,
for
thank
me,
you.
Which means I'll probably have to make my first visit to a Piggly Wiggly. So,
It's waiting for you.
yeah.
All right. Well, final question. Best and worst marketing decision you've ever made?
I don't know if this is the absolute best and worst, but the ones that come to mind for me, the best decision as a marketer personally was when I moved out of a specialist role and into a more generalist role, which was really scary because
Yeah.
it felt very uncomfortable. And on top of that, it was a new role in a reorg where no one knew what this new role was supposed to do. So I had to define it. And it also had no direct reports. So it became this independent contributor leadership role where I was leading results for an entire division for marketing without any of the people reporting to me. And it was very hard, but it also taught me the lesson of fellowship, that if you can get people to follow your vision for what success looks like, how to measure it, and then celebrate the wins together, you can do anything. You can lead any team, because it's so different than having a team that has to do what you want versus they want to do it because they believe in what you're trying to do. And so that was a huge moment for me, is just that leap of faith of moving from e-commerce and the digital world to everything, including TV, SEO, you name it. Right. And so I'll be forever grateful for that decision. And then I think the one, gosh, what's the one I don't like? I still fall into this trap, but I see a lot of people fall into this trap no matter what level of the organization you're in, or even if you're in or out of marketing. Outsourcing your thinking is so dangerous, and it's so easy to do. If you have a problem and you don't have specialists on your team who know how to solve it, you're going to go find a specialist externally, whether that's an agency, a consultant, and that is awesome. But the tendency becomes, oh, good, I found somebody. Go, run, don't walk. And there's no accountability. You find yourself saying yes to things that you don't fully understand, and then you have to unwind it 2 or 3 years down the road. And it just becomes more of a problem versus something that's a well-oiled machine and everybody's in lockstep together. So I have made that mistake in the past. I see others making that mistake all the time. And so outsourcing your thinking to keep yourself from doing that, you have to have dedicated resources on your team working with that outsource person or agency to make sure you understand the numbers backwards and forwards and better than they do. And you can hold them accountable. You can ask them questions. And you can use their reporting to inform your reporting. You don't use their reporting, right? You use it as an input into the outcomes that you're trying to tell a story about. And that, again, takes a lot more time. It's so easy to just say, oh, this is the easy button. I got the report. I'll forward it on. And you don't even end up understanding it or realizing there might be some red flags in the data. So definitely outsourcing your thinking. It's a danger all the time, and you have to be very aware of it.
I think that's great advice. And a good partner will like working with a team that wants to be in the
Yeah,
details.
because then guess what? You grow together.
Right.
Yeah. If they're threatened by that, that's probably a worry. Yes, exactly. Well, Chelsea, thank you again for joining today. We reached out to you because I had a feeling you were going to be a great guest, and I'm so relieved that you were amazing. I really appreciate your time and your perspectives and point of views, and you had a lot of great sound bites that I think are going to be really helpful for people. And we like to kind of end our episodes with a lighthearted question. And I thought, since we started this conversation by talking about a classic brand, which is First American, I wanted to end with this. What's the best piece of classic advice you've received that still holds true today?
Classic is such an interesting word to use here. So for me, it's related to this last question, the power of questions, the power of being a leader who creates a questioning culture, meaning you start with why and you keep asking why until you understand whatever it is you're digging deeper into. Because I've been on a team in the past where the leader just mandated what we were going to go do. And we went and did it, right? And we actually did a pretty good job on it. But the most rewarding thing to me about leadership is seeing the team figure it out and the team come up with the answer because you asked the right question. And so I worked for a CEO, probably 10, 12 years ago now. One of my favorite leaders of all time. Everyone would have followed him no matter where he went, would have followed him into the sunset. We used to nickname him John Wayne. And that was his big thing, is every time I would go meet with him, I knew after about 2 or 3 one-on-ones with him, he was going to ask me why. So before I would meet with him the next time, I was like, I better understand why this data is telling me this. And it made me a better person in my role. And so I took that with me. And there's actually a book called Leading with Questions. I can't remember who it's by, Michael Marquardt. It's just a book of questions for leaders. And I have tabs marked in it all the time so I can try to remember to be intentional about asking other questions besides why, because questions really unlock potential. you have smart people on your team, sometimes we're just flying so fast, we don't ask the right question to get the answers that help us grow. So it's pretty classic advice because you can use that no matter who you are or what role you play at the company that you're working for.
Wow, that was really good.
Well, you can shamelessly steal it because it wasn't my idea.
Wow. No, that was fantastic. I think mine is far simpler. It was one of the things I learned first out of college, which is when you're talking with someone, write stuff down.
Yes.
And because there's so often you're having, I find myself now, you're having these really in-depth conversations with someone and they're not writing anything down. And you're like, are you sure they have it? Are you sure you know what we're going to do? So it was such a simple idea, but it was elevated for me by a guy named David Allen, who wrote a book called Getting Things Done. And he talked about how your mind is for having ideas, not keeping ideas. And so the practice of continually writing things down, even outside of conversations, and then putting them kind of in a trusted system, it really helps free up your creativity because you're not always thinking about buy dog food or the next board meeting. Like you've vetted that out of your brain so you can focus on what's right in front of you. So
What did you say? The mind is for having ideas, not remembering them?
keeping ideas.
There was advice from somebody a long time ago that I heard. If you can't sleep and your mind is racing, have a notepad by your bed, write down what your mind was racing about, and then you'll go back to sleep because you know that you captured it and you don't have to remember it, right? So such good advice. I love that.
Well, mine might seem silly, but this actually has been classic advice that stuck with me. So when I first started at Marketing Architects, I was an intern, started to join some bigger meetings, and I started to feel pressure to say something in the meetings or contribute something. And I was such a young marketer, just a learner. And I asked my dad about it. I'm like, I got to think of things to say in this meeting. And he said, you know, Elena, it's better to be silent and thought an idiot than to speak and remove all doubt. and, and I know it sounds silly, but it's helped me. And in some meetings, it's okay to just listen and learn. And, you know, when you speak, make sure it's intentional. And I've carried that with me throughout my career. And it takes the pressure off of, you don't always have to be saying an opinion. Sometimes you can just...
Oh, that's really good advice. Very good.
That's such good Midwestern passive aggressive advice as well. You know, it's like it's advice, but it's also painful.
Yeah, exactly.
That's our sweet spot. So,
I love it.
all right. Well, thank you, Chelsea. Thanks for joining.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed it. And Rob, great to see you again. And
Always awesome to see you, Chelsea.
all right. Well, I'm going to go look for that Piggly Wiggly shirt.
That's it for this episode of The Marketing Architects. We'd like to thank Taylor De Los Reyes for producing the show. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, and if you like the podcast, please leave us a review. Now go forth and build great marketing.
Marketing Architects.